Ben Portnoy, welcome to the Sport Profile.
Thanks for having me, Dylan. No, this is great. Happy to chat. Thanks for having me. This is really cool.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate it. I've been such a fan of yours. I was like stuttering for a second. It's like I've been an inspiration of yours. No, other way around. You've been an inspiration of mine. Ben Portnoy is inspiring me. I don't know who I inspire.
Hey, listen, I don't know who I'm not sure I'm inspiring much faith in many people, but I'm glad you drew something, maybe a little something here or there.
Definitely. We share a love of sports business, and we're both in that kind of industry, and with that kind of sector specifically, it's usually lower on the totem pole of topics that kind of writers think about. I got into sports business because it was like, oh, this is like the one thing in journalism I haven't really done yet. I've covered the X's and O's, done the feature stories, but like the business side of things I really haven't. So I'm curious for you, like what drives your passion for like the business of sports specifically?
Yeah, I think for me it ties to kind of how I've always thought about sports writing in general, and that just because someone's like a quarterback or a point guard or whatever, like that's usually like the 27th most interesting thing about them, and that like a lot more to them. So I think like taking that approach to, just like a wider breadth of things. So like college football takes up, 85-90% of my time. So like I think about like college football, like I love the games. I love, watching games on Saturday. I love being at games on Saturday, whatever it is, right? But I think that, what makes college football so interesting is both, the pageantry, the passion, the games, but it's also everything that's happening off the field too, right?
Sure.
And so like there's such a rich sort of, I don't know, canvas, whatever, not to be cliche here, but there's such a rich canvas outside of what's going on within just the game and within the X's and O's, within the recruiting and all that. That's frankly like shaping the future of the sport and shaping what's going on the field. And so I think that's where I see it. And I think that's where, for me at least as a, relatively, young writer, I mean, I'm 29, just turned 29 a couple weeks ago. Like,
oh, nice. Happy belated birthday.
Yeah, thanks. No, I know. We didn't bring any candles or anything on here, but it's all right. But I think that, that's something that I feel like I've learned a lot about. And frankly, like I think it's taught me to use a little bit of a different part of my brain than when I was a beat writer or whether I was covering high school sports, whatever. And so, I feel like I've learned a lot, and I feel like, increasingly I feel like I'm kind of getting a real world MBA or something along those lines.
I love that. I've wondered that too, because I know certain people in sports business like have MBAs, but then also there's the other side where like their introduction to private equity is somebody literally telling them the definition of private equity.
Yeah.
And I'm part of that cohort.
Yeah, and I think like honestly, like it's funny, I say this all the time, my bosses probably hate it, but like I'm like the worst sports business reporter on the planet. And like I think I say that to say of like, I come from it from like super outside that. Like that's not generally speaking like how my brain works. Like I'm not a numbers person. I'm not like a highbrow, capital B business person. Like that's just not like how I think or see the world necessarily. But I think because of that, like it opens the door in that like I ask a lot of really dumb questions. Like I say this all the time, but like I really truly think like my favorite question is like, hey, I know this is a really stupid question, but can you explain X, Y, Z? And like, I think like it helps. I really do. Like I think when you're talking about really complicated things like private equity or whatever it is, right? Like, multimedia rights, television deals, things like that. Like the things that the average fan, like Joe fan and, wherever, Fayetteville, Arkansas or Ann Arbor, Michigan or whatever, that just like doesn't like think about those things. Like that's really helpful, I think, because like I'm trying to learn it and trying to understand it. I think I like to think that it helps, convey it in a way that's, digestible for people, or I like to think so anyway.
Oh, for sure. I agree. I think that is also like a very valuable question to ask people, just because like it strips all the jargon away and you just get down to like what's really important, which is like, hey, I need help. You need to help me understand it so I can tell a good story. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously college sports is very expansive. It's very complex. what would you say are like your personal favorite sides to cover right now? You've written about all facets of it, but is there one that you have like a personal like appreciation for, whether it's like NIL, private equity? I saw you did something about like patch sponsors recently, potentially coming to college sports.
It changes by the week. I mean, I think that like, look, again, like I think I'm still learning the space, and like, I'm
Sure.
2 years into this job, and some of it's been like, I feel like the first year and a half was just kind of keeping my head above water, right? Trying to learn the
Yeah.
space, learn the people, learn the places, whatever, learn the important players. And I think it's been cool now, seeing some of these topics where it's like, hey, I've been covering that, or I've been around it, or I have a general idea of how this works, right? Like the house settlement was kind of the first big story that was probably on my docket when I first got to SBJ. And that ended up being like a, year and a half, 2 year thing to cover essentially. And I think for me at least, like again, like as a young reporter and someone learning the space and things like that, I think that was really grounding because it was something that I was like, okay, like I feel like I was here from point A to point, Z. And I think that was really nice, right? I didn't feel like I was playing catch up on it as much, right? Like, and so
Right.
that's been something that, for me at least, I think it's always interesting. Like, and I know you talk to other, young writers and other reporters who, mid-career or whatever. And like, just like as you find yourself in a new job and new places, like I think it's always nice to like find a story or find something that you feel like you like either can be an authority on or just like can follow from beginning to end. And I think
Totally.
that's really grounding in a way to kind of like, get your feet planted a little bit better as you're kind of, moving into a job and getting used to it and all of those
Right.
things.
And that was the house settlement for you, covering that part?
I think so. I mean, that kind of came about probably in, let's see, it runs together a little bit, but probably about December of,
Right.
2023, give or take. So about 3-4 months into me being in this job. And, it's run through, is still, running through now, essentially, bearing assets and pieces of it. So, again, like that was one that I felt like I, wasn't having to play necessarily catch up on as far as like just big national stories that were going on, whereas, or at least being involved in them, right? Or like talking to people around them. Those were things that definitely helped me at least as I was getting going in this job for sure.
Yeah. No, definitely. I guess early on, like, or even now, like, how would you describe what a Ben Portnoy story is? Like, what dynamics of a story have to be there for you to say, like, I'm really confident about this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it depends, right? Like, if we're talking about breaking news, like, I would say, like, I think most people would tell you this, right? Like, even if you've got something nailed down and you, like, have it from 6 or 7 different people, like, I still get nervous. Like, oh my God, what if I'm
Sure.
wrong? Like, what if the carpet gets pulled out from under me? Like,
Yeah.
I'm reporting in the world, and there's still a piece of me that's like, holy shit, like, did I do this wrong? I think as far as, like, when I'm writing a feature or profile, like, I really like to think about, like, every section's a scene, right? Like, I think that it's really hard. Like, the thing that I find with sports business content, generally speaking, is, like, it's really dense, right? Like,
Yes.
there's a lot of places where it's really dense, it's really numbers heavy, it's really, in the weeds, really jargony. And I think this comes through, whether it's because it's coming through, and that's, not just sports business writing, it's through press releases, PR firms, whatever. Like, it's all kind of similar orbits, right? Or, different, sides of a similar orbit. And so I think that with that, like, I think, like, scene setting and, like, humanizing is so important with it because, like, again, like, most people, now it depends on your audience, right? Like, my audience is a little bit different than, like, ESPN or the Wall Street Journal even or whatever, right? But I think, like, anytime you can take, like, some little morsel that's, like, happening and distill it down to an anecdote or something like that, like, I think that's so important. Like, recently I was out in this is last year, I guess, but I went out to Pullman, Washington and Seattle to do kind of an Apple Cup type thing, a year after the Pac-12 fell apart. And kind of different realities facing both schools, economic and everything else.
Did you say the word Apple Cup?
Yeah, Apple Cup.
What is that?
Washington State, the Apple Cup.
I'll have to look that up.
It's a great rivalry, but I went out to Pullman and I was literally, like, the Pac-12, the news started to leak that the Pac-12 was going to be adding 4 or 5 schools after, I guess, basically a year of just being 2 schools.
Yeah.
And sort of trying to rebuild this thing. And that news literally broke while I was standing at the bar, like, after, like, a 14-hour travel day.
Oh, my God.
Starts to break, the phone starts to buzz, whatever. I'm like sitting there having a beer, getting ready to like go to bed, basically. And as that's happening, like my reporter brain turns on, and I start looking around
Yeah.
the bar. A, to see like, is anyone seeing this other than me? B, is there anyone reacting? What's happening, whatever. And it turned into this like, there's a couple students sitting there like drinking pitchers while they're like doing homework, or like there's a guy at the bar who the bartender and I got to talking about the Pac-12, and I think I had a quote or two in there from him.
No way.
On the wall, like there was the bar had taken the Pac-12 logo and taken the one out of it, and it just said Pac-2. And they had painted it on the wall. So I was asking the bartender like how they did it. They literally like got a projector and like stenciled it and then painted it on the wall. So, and this is at the Coug. So anyone who knows Washington State knows the Coug. So so I went in there just to like kind of get a feel for the place. Whenever I'm on the road, I like to do that. But coincidentally, this thing happened. And again, like people hear about the Pac-12 falling apart or whatever, but like it was a cool way to like ground it in. As like this is literally happening in real time as I'm like sitting there. I think I literally gotten like the Washington State beer that they had just started brewing too. So it was like it just made for like a really cool scene. And sometimes that's luck, sometimes that's just coincidence. But but it worked out really well where it turned into a really cool lead. Where again, that's not like super hyper in the weeds sports business reporting, but I do think it is like really important of like when you're writing, when you're reporting out a feature, things like that. Like that stuff's so important. Like, and I think I read way too many things that like don't have real scenes to it, and it drives me nuts because I think it's like if you want people to stick with a story, like you have to have those things. Like the information is really important, obviously you have to set up the information, but like we're talking about things that are really dense, like it's really hard for most people to get through a really dense story, so you need to give them like sort of lighter pieces that they can chew on or set the scene or whatever that might be.
Right. No, I understand that too for sure. There was something I wanted to ask about, kind of going off those specifically. What stories do you then wish were told more? Whether it's in the sports business space, college sports, like what do you think, personally for you, like you could be selfish here. And in fact, it's encouraged. Yeah. What stories do you wish were told more?
I mean, I think like I think that, look, like I would say, it depends on the person, right? Like I would say like I'm not like very much of like an X's and O's person. Like that's not really my speed. Like I was probably a terrible beat writer during my, my previous job. I'm like, cover 2. What does that mean? Like, I'm overstating it, but whatever. But I do think like there's that's an appetite for people, and like there's a lot of people who eat that up. Like for me, that's not necessarily my thing. Like I think there's just like a really good place for like good. We see it a lot, and like I think with like it's been interesting like in the media landscape the way it's evolved, and like a lot of people talk about like Pablo Torre Finds Out, right? It's a great podcast. Pablo does a great job.
Oh my God, yeah,
like amazing stuff. But it's like, and he's conveying like investigative work through a different medium, but like that stuff has always existed. It's just a different medium, right? It's coming through a podcast, a newspaper, things like that. And so like I think it's I don't know if I'm actually answering your question, but I do think there's an interesting dynamic of like, whether it's investigative work or features or things like that, like that stuff can still exist and still find a place and still live. It's just about finding the medium, because I think the medium's changing, right? Like I think I love writing. Like that's what I do for a living. People don't have the attention span now to sit and read a 30-minute, 40-minute profile. Like they just don't. And so like how can you convey things quickly, efficiently, but also like speak to a broader audience? Like I think that stuff's really important, and it's always why you're I have this battle constantly of like, okay, who's our audience? Who am I writing this for?
Yeah.
And I think it's a really interesting dynamic of like, how do you figure that out? And so I don't know if there's one piece of content necessarily, one type of story, but I do think like I love a feature. Like anytime I can dig in and read something, anything that I'm going to read that I like where I'm going to learn something that I didn't know before, right?
Right.
Like, I'm really in the weeds on college sports. Like I talk to a lot of people who are, involved in decisions and things like that. Like if I can read something and I'm finding out something unique or different, like that's a really good thing, and that's like helpful, and like that's not overstating like my network or anything like that. But I think like that's the point, is like you can like you want to be able to find from something from the lowest rung to the top rung, like of who knows and who can listen or who can read something and find something new. And I think that that goes a long way. Like at the end of the day, like you're trying to tell people something they don't know. And, again, I'm not necessarily the audience, me personally, for a lot of stuff, but I do think like, it is helpful. Like if that's if you're trying to teach people something or about a person or a place, like that's super important.
Yeah. So let's flip that a little bit. Your audience might be changing all the time, but who are you the audience for? What is Ben Portnoy consuming every single day? Completely unrelated to like, your profession. What are you eating up right now? Whether it's a show, an album, what are you eating up right now?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'm definitely, I don't know if it's back here, but yeah, it's over my, what is that, my left shoulder. But I'm a deadhead, so that's a really cool painting or picture.
Ooh, my family would love that.
Yeah. So I'm a
I've
deadhead, so I
it
a lot of great
skipped
photos.
my it skipped
Yeah.
my like it skipped my dad, it skipped me, but everybody else
Yep.
huge Deadhead
Love
fans.
love music, big rock fan. Like over, it's
Nice.
that painting over my shoulder is or picture, I guess, is like a giant illustration with that all sort of correlates to like 100 different Grateful Dead songs, which is really cool.
Oh.
There's a guitar back there that's I'm showing off the Office a little bit here, but
Yeah.
there's a guitar back there signed by the lead singer of the Clash as well. So I love the Clash. So I'm a huge music history person. Like I love that kind of thing. Obviously you can see the golf flags. I play a lot of golf, but as far as consuming too, like music is a big one. Like I really listen to a lot of like classic rock and rock music. Like I really like that. I took some rock and roll classes in college. Like I
Oh,
really
that's sick.
love that kind of thing. But I read a lot of politics. I read the Washington Post. I get some of their newsletters in the morning. I read the New York Times. Obviously within the business, like I read, there's other writers on the beat that I read a lot.
Of course.
I read The Athletic a lot, just generally speaking for other coverage. I think, all of those things, like I think it's just helpful to get like a sense of like what's going on in the world because like ultimately it relates. And so it's interesting. Like was talking to some people who work with MLB recently and like they were talking through some stuff around whatever, like the economics of baseball and things that have changed, and things that have gotten better, etc. Listening to them talk, it was like, man, this sounds a lot like college football. Like, and so I think like you listen to, how economic trends are affecting other schools other leagues, things like that. I watch a lot of pro golf because I think it's kind of it's very disconnected from what I do as for a living. So,
Yeah.
As you work in sports writing, you can get, jaded is not the right word necessarily, but, sports is on all the time. So it's something that's, a little bit outside of my general realm of coverage, which is nice. So,
Sure.
but like I follow a lot of people and read a lot of golf coverage, and like there's a lot of things I read about like the divisions between the PJ Tour and Live, and I'm like,
Yep.
man, this sounds a lot like the power conferences and everyone else.
It's so
Sort
true.
of, the world, time is a flat circle kind of thing, right?
So true.
So I think that stuff's really helpful to just like get a sense of like what's happening in the world and like are there trends that are happening other places that might inform what I'm doing from a coverage perspective or things like that. So I think all of that goes like a really long way.
Yeah. I know it's not the proper genre of music, I guess, but what did you think when Pitbull got the naming rights to what was it, FAU?
FIU. Yeah,
FIU. What did you think when he got the naming rights to that?
I think it's great. I mean, look, like I think college sports is so cool because it is so unique. Like, look, like Pitbull's not slapping his name on the Dolphin Stadium. Like, that's just
No.
not gonna happen. But like, I do think there's something really cool and really like, I think I use this comparison a lot, but I think it's true. Is that like college sports is kind of like a mom and pop shop that basically overnight started operating at the like, breadth of a company like Coca-Cola. And so like obviously but they still operate like it's a mom and pop shop and it's just like that doesn't really work. And so
I can see that.
and so there's a lot of pain points because of that. And so it's created this huge business that has never operated as such for so many years, but there's still like a quaintness to it that exists that I think is super cool and really interesting. And so I think that part's really cool. And really interesting, and so that's why you get things like Pitbull slapping his name on a stadium and being a naming rights deal and things like that. So that's really fun. Like I think it's really cool, and I think it's what makes college sports unique, right? Like I think despite how many things are happening in the ecosystem that can take that away, like I think ultimately at the end of the day, like that's what makes college sports so cool.
Right, for sure. So something I thought was cool as well was you did an interview recently where you described your first journalism check as a B-Dubs gift card. And I don't, I'm not concerned with how much you're making. I'm concerned with what your go-to B-Dubs order or what your favorite sauce is.
I'm not gonna lie, it's been a while since I've been to B-Dubs. So like honey barbecue's good. What's the Asian zing? Asian zing's always a good one.
Love a good Asian zing.
No, that's a good story though. I'll tell that story because I think it's a fun one. But I'm
Yeah.
sure you have other young reporters listening. But when I was in high school, I kind of got started with working for the school paper and was living in the suburbs of Chicago. I'm from DC originally, but was living in Chicago at the time and. Was working for the high school paper, and I was kind of, into the journalism thing. I thought it was what I wanted to do in college, but I wanted to get some extra experience. And so I got hooked up with a freelance gig with a local high school sports blog that no longer exists. But
I know that too.
Yeah, so I was working for covering my high school, essentially.
Yeah.
I was covering everything from football, boys and girls soccer, lacrosse, basketball, everything, right? Like anything I could get my hands on, essentially. And so when I was trying to figure out how to get the gig as like a freelancer, like again, I'm 16, 17, like whatever I could, I'm like whatever works, right? I was talking to my soon-to-be boss and he said, well, we'd love to bring you on. We could use the extra help, whatever. But, we can't really pay you. But, Buffalo Wild Wings is a sponsor of ours, so we can probably get you some Buffalo Wild Wings gift cards.
It's incredible.
16, 17, I'm like, hell yeah, that sounds awesome. So, yeah,
I would take that too.
Yeah, so there you go. So functionally, my first paycheck in journalism was a Buffalo Wild Wings gift card.
That's incredible. Do you, when you're not at a football game, like what's your favorite, like, or when you're not covering a football game, what is your favorite like game day snack, appetizer, meal? What's on the menu for Ben Portnoy?
Ooh, that's a good question. Love a buffalo chicken dip. Love that. That's probably a little cliche these days, I know, but listen.
Love
my
it.
high school buddies have a really great recipe for it. Like, that's one. Dude, anything like finger food, right? Like pigs in a blanket, anything like that. Like, I'm down for nachos, whatever you got. Like, listen, little chicken tenders. Like, if you want to go for a light platter, like, down for that. Good game day snack. It's, not original, but I'm down for it.
So you're originally from DC, so what's your stance on crab dip then?
I like crab dip. I'm pro.
You're pro crab dip?
Pro crab dip.
Nice.
Pro crabs. Like love cracking open crabs. Like when I was in growing up, one of my best friends' folks had a place out in Annapolis, and so we would spend a lot of time on the Eastern Shore and would do
perfect
and all that and crack them open and all that. So I do know how to open a crab. So
really.
That's my bar trick, I guess, maybe. But, there's, it's not super well known. But there's a few of us East Coasters that do know how to do it. So, yeah.
I don't have any, I certainly don't have any bar tricks. I don't even know how to open a crab. I went to grad school at UMD, so I'm from Jersey. So, like, coming back from Maryland was that, I'm at the Jersey Shore and I tried, like, crab mac and cheese, thinking it would be as good as it was in Maryland. It was disgusting.
It's not the same. It's
not even close. My only bar story, and I can only tell this to like sports people, is that my uncle's college roommate is the brother of WNBA commissioner Kathy Engelbert.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her that on top of the Empire State Building during the 2024 WNBA draft.
I love that. That's awesome.
And my uncle has a distinct memory of like the three of them being in the room together.
Yep,
that's
good
it.
Stuff. I love
that's
that.
all he said when I told him I was going to the draft. He said, "Go tell Kathy that her brother was my roommate in college at Fairleigh Dickinson."
That's wild.
Yeah, so we're literally on top of the Empire State Building. They're all doing their photo ops, and I said, "Hey, Kathy, your brother Kevin went to FDU, right?" And she just looks. She's like, "Who is asking about my brother?" And I'm like, "My name's Dylan Manfrey. My uncle wanted me to tell you that he says hello. He let me know that your brother Kevin was his roommate in college." That was my story. But I wanted to ask about the Midwest because I read that you said in 2019 that the Midwest, you felt like the Midwest had shaped you, and I'm curious in what ways you feel that that kind of territory molded you at that stage of your life.
Yeah, moving to Chicago was like I moved after I lived in DC till I was 15. Moved to Chicago, did 3 years of high school there. Like that's obviously a crazy time to move, and
yes, oh my god, yeah,
and all that. So did the whole, pretty much, if you can picture Mean Girls, that's pretty much where I went to high school. So that's a lot that, but no, I mean, I think I learned a lot. Like, right, like I think it was really cool for me. Then that, like, I've moved around a lot now. I've lived in the East Coast, I lived in the South, I've lived in the Midwest, and I just like,
Yeah.
I think there's so much value in like moving around and seeing different places, different people, and all that. And it's really cool. And like, my college buddies joke with me all the time about this of like, when people ask me like, where am I from, and it's more the answer is really not one place. It's more, the answer is really like how much time you got. So. Like I said, I mean, like I grew up in DC. That's kind of where I was, lived my whole childhood. But
Sure.
in the Midwest, going to Indiana as an undergrad, like all of those things. Like I think, like again, you just see a different place, different types of people, different people than you grew up with. And so I think like for me, that was super important when I moved to the South because like again, like I felt like I had done that on some level, right?
Right.
Certainly different place, different people, but. It wasn't the first time I was picking up and moving and having to learn and having to adjust. And I think like that was super valuable for me. Like, whether it was that, I did a semester in Spain when I was in college. And, like that was super valuable, and like learning the language and living with a host family and all of that. Like, all of those things. Like I think like it's just so important. And I think again, like when you have, a lot of, I'm sure you have a lot of young listeners to this. Like I do think it is super valuable and super important to just like say yes to somewhere like you've never been, right? Like,
Sure.
and everyone's circumstances are a little different, but like, I never set foot in the state of Mississippi till I moved there, and
Yeah.
till I moved there, excuse me, and but I learned so much and like had such a valuable experience there, and I think that's so important that like if you're willing to do that, like do it because you will gain so much out of it, and like. I've met more people, my wife notwithstanding, through the state of Mississippi, and so
she's from Mississippi.
She's from Mississippi. I met her in Starkville living there, though. So
well, Dan, say yes. You might meet him. You might meet your partner.
Yeah, exactly. So it's crazy. So
how's your Spanish?
It's good. I mean, I speak not fluent, but I speak good Spanish. I mean, I keep
nice.
I speak Spanish. I would say
I speak zero.
It's rare that I get to break it out, but I will say, like in college, this is actually a fun story, a fun aside.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I was interning in DC for the summer at it was called the Sports Capital, and it was basically a couple of journalists in the city who had worked there for a long time. It started before the Athletic was in DC. It kind of started this site to do sort of what the Athletic eventually was doing, sort of the feature stuff and things like that. For whatever reason, they hired me as an intern for the summer, and so I was covering the All-Star game was in DC that summer, and I got to speak and interview with David Ortiz in Spanish. So that was super cool.
That's sick.
So a little bit, and then it was very funny. Like after that, I went to the locker room, and it was me and a couple other Nats reporters, and they had it was the head of the Futures game, and one of their prospects, I actually can't remember who it was now at the time. I'm sure I can find it somewhere, but was there. I think I'm pretty sure he was from the Dominican. I'm not positive. I'm pretty sure he was from the Dominican. Didn't speak great English. It was a little bit broken, things like that. And so all the reporters kind of started talking, and he answered a few questions. It probably lasted 5-10 minutes. Of course, like all the local DC people wanted to talk to him. Then they all started to walk away, and I like kind of waited to the end, and I started speaking to him in Spanish, and he kind of looked at me, and he was like, "You speak Spanish?" And I was like, "Yeah, like kind of." And I asked him a couple questions, and we chatted for a minute, and then one of the other beat writers,
the most unassuming person.
Yeah, it was very funny. So one of the other beat writers came up to me and was like, "Hey, can you help translate?" I was like, "Oh God, what am I getting myself into?" And
so now you're playing translator.
So now I had to I helped translate a little bit, but it's funny. Like it carried weight though, because like I was at the Masters a few years ago covering it.
I see the flag behind you.
Yes, yeah, back there. And so I guess this was 2023. I was covering it when John Rahm won.
Yeah.
And Jose Maria Olazabal, who's Spanish and was, obviously from Spain and all of that, was there and had won the Masters. I think he's a two-time winner, if I'm not mistaken. But all the former champions, a lot of them wear their green jackets on Sunday and are there.
Right.
And so he was there talking to Spanish press. And so I like popped in and was listening, and like obviously I got good stuff out of it. But I translated it to English, but it was really cool because like I was able to do that, and there weren't any other American press that could like necessarily get as candid an answer or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And so I think I did weave in a little bit of Spanish into that story actually, which was really cool. So yeah.
Sick. That's fun.
That's really my bar trick is this.
Hey, that's a good one. That is certainly a good one. So one thing I ask everybody, kind of, toward the end is, just like strictly like professionalism aside, like just about you as a person, Ben Portnoy, what do you like most or admire about yourself?
Man, we're getting introspective here. I think like one thing that's been really good for me, whether it's professionally, personally, whatever, is like I just like I really, I guess I don't know, admire my own personality, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
I think like I like to think that I would never meet a stranger, and some of that's again like that I've lived a couple of different regions, places, things like that. I feel like I can connect with a lot of people because of that, and it's helpful. And so I think that whether that's personally, professionally, it goes a long way. And so I think like I like to think that that's something I can lean into, whether it's as a reporter or as a person, and makes for something that I really that I really like about myself. I think that's a good one.
No, I love that, man. Thank you. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on, man. It means a lot. It's great to hear your story. Both from like the journalism side and just personally. It's really really interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the rest of your work this college season.
Definitely. Thanks so much for having me, Dylan. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, wait, one more thing I wanted to say. There's no relation to Dave, is there?
There's no relation.
You
There's
get
no
that a lot?
I do, especially working in sports. If you believe
Yeah.
it, yes.
Does it like mess you up a little bit?
It definitely, I get it asked it a lot. Every now and then he'll ask me about, or it'll pop up, but nothing too crazy yet. But
You ever met him?
I haven't met him.
You have not met him.
I've never met him, but
Okay.
one of these days we'll see.
Hey, he's coming to college football. Places left and right now. I've heard.
It's crazy. He's all over the place, man. It's wild. So yeah, there are two of us in this now.
This episode is brought to you by Digital Sport by Hot Paper Lantern, a division of the PR, brand, and marketing agency Hot Paper Lantern. Digital Sport by Hot Paper Lantern helps brands grow at the intersection of sports, tech, and gaming. Learn more at hpldigitalsport.com or find them on LinkedIn at Digital Sport by Hot Paper Lantern.